Well, hey everybody, let's talk about German weapons of World War II. The Germans had some of the best engineers and military minds in World War II. Some of their scientists and, like I said, engineers were, some of the best, and they were innovative. They were kind of ahead of their time, and the Allies kind of had to catch up because the German military was the best in the world when World War II started. And so we had to really kind of gain some ground, and we did, and eventually surpass the Germans. But here are some of those German weapons they came up with to start building Hitler's Third Reich. First, their uniforms. You can see, of course, military uniforms vary depending on which branch of the military you're in, and what type of terrain you're fighting in. And if you're an officer, if you're just um, a regular soldier, it all depends, and that's going to be what your uniform's going to look like. And of course, you have your fatigues, and then you have your formal wear. But you can see here are what some of the German uniforms looked like. Here's some officer uniforms and some more formal stuff going on there. But you can see some of the things they would have on their hats, the belts, stuff like that to distinguish them. One of the preferred weapons of the Germans was the Luger pistol, and this was a German-created weapon. And you can see I tried to include on here what the bullets would look like, because obviously the caliber or the size and so forth of the bullets varied depending on the type of weapon you had. But the Luger was one of the favorite sidearm weapons for the Germans. The Mauser was another handgun that the Germans could use. Very famous. You can see the German weapons. It's interesting to me how they looked. The Germans were tough, right? They were steely personality. At least that's how they came across, and that's kind of how their weapons looked to me. It's just they reflected the German personality. And the Walther P38 was also a favorite. So the Luger, the Mauser, the Walther, these were all sidearms, all handguns the Germans could use. And very effective, very well made. All right, now a few of the rifles, bigger guns, right? The GEWEHR 43, you can see, of course, the caliber, the bullet gets bigger. And the magazine is the black part there, the little black block coming out of the gun, the bottom of the gun. And so most magazines will hold on pistols anywhere from 5 or 6 up to 10 or 12, and then on the rifles back then you could usually 12 to 15, but it's varied depending on the weapon. But you can see obviously the rifles are going to be used for more long range things, and obviously very effective. Okay, here's the Karabiner 98K. You can again see it's the rifle, the long barrel, used for longer distances, your snipers, things like that. And then we take it up a notch, right? Is basically you have a rifle that is it's going to be called a STURMGEWEHR, right? 44, the STG 44. And the magazine's going to hold more rounds. And I mean, you're getting into some serious stuff here, right? These are going to be crazy weapons the Germans have come up with, and man, they are tough. And then the Maschinengewehr 42 is going to be basically a machine gun. It's going to be a Gewehr, right? Rifle, but it's going to be machine gunized, if you will. And can you imagine going up against one of these things? It's on a tripod there and set, and you got the belt of ammunition that you feed in, and man, crazy. The Beretta as well was another rifle that Germans would use, and and their allies would use it also. But very good rifle, heavy, and could be very effective, right? Obviously, the effectiveness is going to depend a lot on who's in charge of using the weapon and how good of a shot they are and so forth. But the Beretta was a favorite. And then leave it to the Germans to come up with something like this, right? The Maschinenpistole. What does that look like? It's like a machine gun, but it's a small one. It's like a pistol-sized machine gun. Crazy, just crazy. You could, but the Germans came up with stuff like this, and wow, if you can imagine, if you're carrying around a rifle and you're carrying around one of these and a sidearm, that's a lot of firepower. And then we take it up even another notch. The big guns, right? The Panzerschreck, which is the anti-tank, anti-everything German bazooka. You can see the rounds there on the right, basically the bullets it would be shooting. The Panzerschreck was to knock out tanks and knock out big stuff. I mean, these are like little missiles, little rockets shooting out of a gun. So, yeah, you didn't want to be in the way of that. And the Panzer was one of the German tanks. You can see the Panzer is a smaller tank, and but it's going to be fast. The Germans developed the best tanks, at least at the start of the war, for any country in World War II. And their Panzer divisions are going to storm across terrain and be very effective down in North Africa and in Poland and places like that. They're just going to dominate at first. And so the Panzer is kind of the preferred German tank to get around quickly. And then the Panther is a little bigger tank than the Panzer. This was the beefed up version. And you can see the longer barreled gun, more firepower, and not probably as fast as the Panzer, but this is the heavier tank. And again, you wouldn't want to be in the way of either of these tanks for sure, but and leave it to the Germans again. Their engineers, crazy. They were good. They came up with weapons that were unmatched, unparalleled at the first part of the war. Now let's look briefly at some of the German aircraft. They had some good airplanes. Here we go. The Messerschmitt Bf 109. Usually the German planes were named after the company that made them. Okay, Messerschmitt made this type of plane. This was built more than any other combat aircraft of World War II. Almost 35,000 of these were made. It was one of the best fighters at the beginning of World War II until the Allies could come up with kind of things to match it. So, but the Messerschmitt was kind of the preferred German small aircraft. The FOCKE-WULF 190 turned out to be the best German fighter plane of World War II. It was developed, like I wrote on here, to flank the Messerschmitt on their missions, and this turned out to be, very effective plane. Unfortunately for the Germans, they just didn't probably make enough of them. This is going to be kind of a problem for the Germans, is they didn't make enough of some of their best stuff, which ends up really devastating them when they come up against just as good of enemy aircraft. The Junkers 88 was the backbone of the Air Force for Germany, the Luftwaffe, in World War II. The most versatile aircraft that the German Air Force had. It was a bomber, a night fighter, a reconnaissance plane, a dive bomber. It could be used as an attack plane, also a torpedo plane. It was kind of the Swiss Army knife of German planes. It could do everything. The HEINKEL He.219 was Germany's best night fighter. Fast, easy to handle. It was heavily armed. A lot of firepower on this plane for Germany, but Germany didn't make enough of them, and so that really comes back to bite them later